Very excited. Thanks for joining us today, Andrea. So before we jump into the Egglife brand story, I would love to just take a step back and have you tell us a little bit about your journey. You were in a couple of companies that you appropriately called Vice, Vice roles with Buffalo Wild Wings and Bean, and then you made the intentional choice into the better for you space. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, I cut my teeth in the advertising agency world, working on Burger King. That was the first brand I ever worked on. Super fun, challenger brand. I love a good challenger story, so really appreciate what you guys are doing here at Taco John's. And then I wanted to go try the client side. So I went and worked at Jim Beam for a while. I had the fortune of working on the Skinny Girl Cocktails brand, so I got to work on that position and what that meant of bringing a new brand into an existing portfolio. That was my first foray into what I call better for you. It was a skinny margarita.
Skinny for that is that's
loosely better for you. But it really did kind of open the aperture a bit for me. And then I was missing the agency world and went back in the agency world, and I worked in the managed food services business for a bit on Aramark brand, which was fascinating, and working on a whole rebranding and repositioning for them. And then my husband calls Minnesota women salmon, and he says we all swim upstream eventually to come back to home, I guess. And so I said the upstream and ended up back here in Minneapolis. I had been living in Chicago, and I worked at Buffalo Wild Wings down the street and led the beverage portfolio there, and met some really wonderful colleagues that are here today. So it's going to see some familiar faces, and worked on Wings and Beer, which is super fun. But after I left Buffalo Wild Wings, I really took some time at our son, and what do I really want to do next? And for me, it was a really intentional move to go into the better free space and go small. I worked for a lot of big companies, and I really wanted to see what it was like to get a little bit closer to the consumer and really try the world of the startup business. And so I had a good friend and former colleague that was doing something interesting at this innovative company called Egglife Foods. We make tortilla-style wraps out of eggs instead of flour, so they're low carb, protein, gluten-free, grain-free, keto-friendly, full of all the things that consumers are looking for, and avoid of the things that they're often trying to avoid. And I lead marketing and innovation. I've been with the company for about 3.5 years. We started in the Chicagoland area, test piloting in about 300 retail locations. We're now nationwide in over 12,000 locations across the country. Here in Minneapolis, you can find us in Walski's, you can find us in Byerly's, you can find us at Aldi, Target. We're launching Whole Foods nationally in a couple of weeks. I'm so excited about that. They come in 5 flavors, and we actually are market testing our 6th flavor garden salsa at Aldi. Minneapolis is a test market. I would really appreciate it if all of you had to buy a pack of garden salsa. We really need those velocities at all.
So it's original, everything with an egg,
Yeah.
Southwest,
Yes.
Italian.
Sweet cinnamon.
Yes.
Zero sugar, 5 grams of protein. Really great value.
So this session is appropriately titled Going Against the Grain. Tell us about the Egglife brand story and about this phrase, this disruptive legacy flour-based tortilla category, which you don't want to disrupt it too much. For those of you looking for a healthy, on-the-go meal snack idea, you guys really just came in and sort of pulled the category and changed it. Yeah, tell us about that.
Yeah, we have a great founder story. So Egglife is our largest shareholder, is actually the 2nd largest egg producer in the country, frozen carbs. And there's a woman named Peggy Johns who is still an employee of Rose for Carbs. Peggy was having some health challenges, and her doctor said, Peggy, you really got to cut down on the carbs, and you really got to work on increasing the protein. And she knew a lot about eggs. She worked in the egg industry for over 30 years. She worked in today. And one of the many things she knew about eggs was that they're high in protein and low in carbs. And she's a bit of a savant in the kitchen, I would say. She loves a good challenge, and she kind of said to herself, okay, if I'm going to make this lifestyle change and really live a different way, I need to find ways to enjoy the foods I love in a healthier way. And so she created a whole host of products that were high in protein, low in carbs, all made out of eggs. And she would carry around this little, like, old school photo album with, like, actual printed out pictures of all the things that she had made. And she would, like, show them to anybody, you know, that would look. And one of the many products she made was these egg white tortillas. And she took them to the CEO of Rose River Farms, and she, you know, showed him what she had made, and he was really blown away. And he's like, Peggy, I think you could change a lot of people's lives with this product. You should really commercialize this. And his name is Marcus Russell. He's quite a visionary gentleman, and they leaned in and said, okay, we're going to invest in this brand, we're going to invest in this product. We built our own bespoke manufacturing facility. We self-produce all of our products. And yeah, here we are today. We're 12,000 stores. We've gone from 4 million to 40 million in net new in 3 years. So yeah, quite a success story. We're the #1 item in dairy. And yeah, we're not stopping.
When did it 2017?
She started ideating in 2017. We market launched in the fall of 2019. 2020 was our first full year. Great timing to be able to let me tell you that.
But you still, I mean, the growth that we saw was so impressive, despite everything seeing during that time. So another part of the brand story that I found, and I know everyone will find interesting, is that you essentially created a new category, right? So tell us more about that. I know there were some surprises, some obstacles around that, just due to the fact that consumers are like, what do I do with this?
Yeah,
How do I?
it's definitely a challenge in the market, I'll tell you that. Yeah, so we created a category. I mean, egg white wraps didn't exist before Egglife, and so there was a lot of thought into where do we put this thing in store? It is a refrigerated product, so we can't be center store. We have very few ingredients in our product, and so it has to be refrigerated. And so we made the intentional choice to go in the egg set, partially because it's a really high traffic area of the store, so we knew we'd have a lot of eyeballs. For Egglife, chose the name of the brand that, made out of 95% egg white, that made a lot of sense. But as much as that is helpful from a traffic standpoint, there's no category context. So when someone sees an Egglife wrap, they're like, well, what's that? And our #1 SKU is our original, and it's yellow. We're actually getting egg whites and not yolk. But yellow kind of connotates egg yolk, and so there's this barrier of, is it going to taste like eggs? And I can tell you it actually doesn't. It's part of the proprietary process behind our wraps. It actually taste like eggs. And so that's also part of the challenge. Is how do you communicate what is egg white, what's an egg white tortilla, what the heck do I do with it? And then before you can get to the point of purchase, where do I find the store? So it's been challenging. We're not always in eggs either. Sometimes we're in shredded cheese. If you go to like a retail like Sprouts, they actually have a refrigerated bread wall. So in that context, it's different. I think it's an easy get for a consumer when you're next to refrigerated bread and other tortilla products, but often we are the one with.
How do you, so along those lines, you know, you have these street recipes online. How are you doing that with consumers? Like, are you doing anything in the store? Like, are you educating the consumer in different ways on how they can use the product they've never tried it before?
Yeah, we have a full funnel of marketing support from awareness down to loyalty tactics, but recipe strategy and highlighting versatility is really important. We hear from consumers that we are an alternative to tortillas, not necessarily a substitute, which is a really interesting nuance because we actually can pretty much do everything that a tortilla can and more. Because of the neutral flavor profile, it's super pliable. Our original wrap is great with peanut butter and banana and honey, so it can eat like more like a white bread substitute, which is really interesting. It sounds bizarre, but people are in eggs, but just trust me, it's really good.
Trust me. And the cinnamon one?
Yeah, and it's part of the reason why I went into like the sweet space, because sweet protein options are really lacking in the market, and so that was very intentional for us as well. But it's amazing to see what our consumers just figure out on their own. We have consumers that cut our wraps up, boil them into low-carb pasta, which was really fascinating. So we've created a whole bunch of pasta recipes. We just developed a great ad time recipe last week. And so it's been fun to see how creative really our consumers have been and how that fuels some of our recipe strategy as well.
A huge motivation behind all the alternatives.
Yeah.
Right? So, and the convenience factor, we talked about that. You said all a little bit about that. I thought that was
Yeah, we were doing some consumer focus groups, and we were asking, what is it about Egglife that you love? And we're like, well, it's just so convenient. And it's more convenient than a traditional tortilla. And for any of you that have been in the back of a focus group, you're like seriously writing a note that needs to get to the moderator, like, hold on that, like dig in that more, because I'm sitting back here going, how is this more convenient than a tortilla? It's actually in the refrigerated section, it looks like a tortilla, it comes in the same type of package, like, I don't understand. And once they unpacked that insight, it was around that eating healthy is perceived or can be more difficult than eating not healthy, right? Like you have to be more intentional. Maybe you're meal prepping. You're thinking about like all the different components that are going to go in that meal. I don't know. It's a bit more overwhelming for the average consumer. And so for them, it was like this is like a one-to-one substitution. I could do the same thing I was doing before, but I'm just doing it with a healthier option. And for me, that is what convenience is defined as. And so that was a really light bulb moment for us because we hadn't really thought about the convenience aspect of the product before. And so just really listening to our consumers and kind of leaning into that from the messaging standpoint.
So with the 6 flavors, or 5, maybe 6, we talked a little bit about how intentional and methodical the Egglife team was in going to market and how you could have taken it in like 6 different directions, but you chose to just launch with the tortilla. And that contributed to a lot of the success. Talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we were super intentional about our go-to-market strategy in a few ways. One, we were really focused geographically. So we launched in the Chicagoland market. We chose not to go through brokers. So we wanted to own the conversation with our retail partners wherever we could. We do now use brokers on a very occasional basis where it's advantageous to us, but still for the most part, like we own those conversations and that pitch story. We also executed what we kind of called the sun and planet model. So when we would go into a new market, we would look for the retailers that were really progressive. So like here in Minneapolis, like Kowalski's, the retailers that were taking in new products and really were like our core shopper demo and going after those first. They might not be the biggest player in the market, but they were doing really interesting things. And those were our sons that we would latch onto first. So we have a really, really strong selling story then to go after the more mass market retailers. And it's proven out to be really successful for us. We're running over $12,000 now in pretty much every region.
And then along those lines of being intentional, let's talk a little bit about media strategy. Getting really cool 30 and 50 seconds. Yeah, so we'll show that in a minute, but I thought your approach to marketing was really unique to be very specific about your
Yeah, so last year for us was a lot about just like gaining distribution, and I felt honestly that we were just playing like whack-a-mole. Like you'd have a new retailer come on here, like let's dump some marketing support there. Oh, now we've got this guy coming up over here, and we didn't know where it was coming from, and we couldn't control it. Like where we get distribution is where we earn distribution is where we earn distribution, and so there wasn't an opportunity for us to say, okay, let's plan out our calendar next year, which just wasn't the case. Go wherever the requests go. But this year we were in a little bit of a different situation where we had a much more established base of distribution. And so this year we took a much more intentional approach to our media planning. So what we did is we said, okay, here's all of the doors that we have across the country, and we know where our consumer target is. Let's overlay that. We're the most densely saturated consumer markets with the most densely saturated retail presence, and we're going to have you up investment there. And we literally created an index, we racked and stacked them, and they naturally had a couple of breaks. And so, like for example, in our tier 1 markets, like Minneapolis and Milwaukee, Columbus is one of them. And we heavied up our reach and frequency model in those markets, and we over-invested in those markets. We had a tier 2 where we had a slightly reduced reach and frequency model, and then in balance of US, even a little bit less reach and frequency model, and we narrowed in our consumer target in tier 3 as well. So in our focus markets, we're targeting healthy, active consumers, and then we have 2 sub-segments. One is protein seekers, because we know that people that are looking for protein, Egglife is super relevant for them, and then people with specialty diets. So if your aperture is narrowed, by choice or necessity, whether you're celiac, whether you choose to eat gluten-free or grain-free, if your options are narrowed, Egglife plays a disproportionate role in your selection process. And so we really double down on those consumers in the rest of the US, so we don't have as dense of saturation of retail. And then from a channel mix perspective, for the most part, it's pretty even across the board, except in tier 1, where we actually chose to have the app with outdoor. So, we have a digital first consumer, but actually the overlay of outdoor advertising in our tier 1 markets has provided some really nice coverage, and it helps us kind of outkick our coverage and act like a bigger brand than we even are, which has been really nice. And then we're going to be launching connected TV in our tier 1 and tier 2 markets here in short order. And actually, I have a special surprise for everyone today. The only people that have seen these labs are people that work there, right? So this is a little bit of like a debut. Yeah, it's exciting. So we have a 30-second and a 15-second spot that I'm going to share today. We actually also have some 6-second spots that we'll be running as remarketing messaging as well. I don't have this today, but you can see the 30 and the 15. So without further ado, this is our new spot.
Hear it again.
Hit
it one more time. Okay. Super.
Okay, Ty is hitting the weights. Dave is doing both cars, and I am skipping sugar. Okay.
There's a wrap for all of that. Egglife.
Egg. All that,
You know it.
that you have breakfast,
Yes.
no honey, no sugar sweet.
Oh,
Egg white. They're egg white wraps.
what's that?
No way.
Yes way. Egglife. The perfect wrap for all of that.
Eating good is hard.
That's one is easy. Egglife wraps.
Protein packed breakfast.
Egglife.
No hot lunch.
Egglife.
No sugar treat.
Egglife.
Egg white.
Egglife. The perfect wrap for all of that.
So fun story about Ross Matthews. For those of you that don't know him, he was actually an intern on the Jay Leno show. He was Ross the intern, so almost segment. Then he went on to be a correspondent for B News. He's been on Celebrity Fit Club and a bunch of other reality TV shows. And right now he's the host of the Drew Barrymore Show, which is the #1 daytime television talk show. He had a really impressive kind of journey back to health, I guess, during COVID, and lost a bunch of weight, and he discovered Egglife, and he filmed this amazing reel. It was like, if I would have briefed him and like been there in his kitchen coaching him, like I couldn't have asked for a better piece of content. Like it was gold. And so we reached out to him and said, thank you, first and foremost, please stock your fridge. And so we stocked Ross's fridge, and he then generously decided he wanted to introduce Drew Barrymore to that. So he took our apps on the Drew Barrymore show, and they ate them together. It was just, again, I was like, thank you. And so we decided to partner with him on a more substantial level, and said, would you like to actually be in some spots that we want to put in screen? Luckily obliged, and we're really excited about the partnership. I overheard him at the shoot tell me that he wasn't talking to me, I overheard him. He would like to be on the Egglife board of directors, so maybe Ross will
Authentic brand.
yeah, he's obsessed. He actually took the product that we had on set. He's like, well, what's going to happen to all this product after we're done shooting? And unfortunately, they're open now. So they're going to oh, no. Like, he got his Ziploc bag out and he stuffed his bag with all the He's genuinely success. Like, and a lot of that was like, just him.
Well, and that's the thing, is once you start using it, you realize there's so the theme of future of food, y'all know about the restaurants, food I really most excited about.
Yeah. Yeah, so the way our wraps are made, we actually have IP associated with it. So we have a proprietary technology for how we take our eggs and turn them into wraps, and that technology expands into other categories. And so the way that I think about our innovation strategy is we'll continue to harness the power of eggs to transform traditionally flour-based foods. So that's the sandbox that the Egglife brand will live in. So we're going to go from there. You can imagine like the pizza crust, pasta, snacks, products using our wraps in the food format, and hope to be in two new categories next year. So we're working fast and furious. figure this out.
Awesome. I want to leave time for questions, so I have a couple more questions, but I want to open it up to you guys before I ask any more questions. Does anyone have anything else
So when is his video contention, when's that coming out of law?
It should be live next week. Yeah. This was a technically a rough cut. I think that it's finishing today.
What did he send you?
Oh, his pitch to Egglife? Didn't he send you?
Oh, his real, oh, that, I mean, that is out in the internet.
Go to your Instagram page, is it out there?
I don't know, that's a good question, because it was on his reel, yeah, we reposted it, but yeah, that's a good question. I illegally downloaded the video, and we can't use that.
Any other questions? So one of the words, I think what I think is interesting too is the consumer feedback. You had said that there were a couple of things in your feedback loops where you were hearing game changer, and I'm curious to hear more about that and what it is that surprised you guys about that. Because the space that you live in is exactly what consumers are looking for, but why is that a surprise and how do you know what you've heard?
Yeah, I guess I just didn't expect people to have such a visceral reaction to an Egglife tortilla. But we hear game changer all the time, obsessed. And I think it is because they feel like they can have all their favorite foods, but in a better for you way, because the versatility that Egglife provides, it's this kind of magical element for them. And so I think that that's really, that's been it. And especially when the consumer does have a narrow set of choices because they can't eat a certain thing. It's like, oh my gosh, I haven't had pasta in forever. I haven't had pizza in forever. I got pizza, great pizza crust in the air fryer. It's just been kind of this conscience that for them to indulge in some of the foods that they love, but in a healthier way.
Is the feedback from the consumers driven what direction to take the brand next, like in terms of, because you said,
Yeah.
oh, I mean, you guys didn't watch the sweet and technical products, right?
Yeah, we definitely could have. I mean, Peggy had photo books,
Photo books,
ideas and things that we could do. We were really intentional to build the brand on wraps first and foremost because when we had looked at a lot of the brand mentors that we aspire to be someday, they were super intentional and really focused. And I think the way that I look at it is we built the brand on wraps. We have limited money, we're a startup. So being really, really focused and intentional as a new brand in a new category and saying this is what Egglife is today, and then kind of earning the right with consumers to go to the next place. So we watch a lot about how do they use our wraps? Like, can that be inspiration for what our next product launches? We're seeing a lot of consumers make pasta with their wraps. So that's a place to be in the future. And so what permission are they giving us to extend the brand because ultimately they're creating the brand value.
And last question is, I have my top favorites that I use Egglife for real, but
Yeah.
what's your like top two favorite ways to use it?
Probably, so our Italian is like such a sleeper SKU. We have really limited distribution. It's really good. That with pizza sauce, mozzarella, and pepperoni is a pizza pocket in the air fryer is probably number one for me on the hot side. The original with peanut butter and banana is like a go-to. And cinnamon. Yeah, and I have a bowl of free coupons, so come in, go right back to wraps. Can't use the coupon at Aldi, but we are running an aisle offer right now. So if anyone has the aisle app, you get a free pack of garden salsa at Aldi. And hot dogs are glasses, so please.
Very cool question.
Oh, yes. So we, right now, our retail price is $5.99 for a pack of 6 wraps. I honestly don't know if the consumers can easily do the math, it's about a wrap. We had launched at $4.99 is our initial pricing strategy. Everybody in the room, the last couple of years have been quite intense from an inflationary pressure standpoint, so we did take price in Q4 of last year. For the most part, our retailers taken price up shelf. We've had a few big ones that have not decided to move yet, so we're waiting on bated breath for them to move because they're quite compressed for management standpoint right now. I think they're complaining about it, it's what we say, we have a solution for you. That's a little challenging, and then we do have a club pack. We tested in Costco in a few regions as well with a pack that has 12 wraps in it, or either 7.99 or 8. Yeah, it's definitely a premium price product. But in the refrigerated space, like we would compete with like CFJ, they make an almond flour tortilla, and they're priced above us, they're at $8.99. And then there's another brand called Aura, that makes cauliflower sandwich thin, that's also priced above us as well. So we're kind of premiumly priced versus flour tortillas that kind of like in the premium sector would be like average to slightly less. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, we do think about it. I think what will be interesting is what we do in the future on the club channel. I think for us, the club shopper is so exploratory and it's a great sampling opportunity for us as well. And so I think we will play a bit of pricing strategy in the club channel in particular as we think about brand accessibility. We also have a partnership with a company called Hatch, and their whole mission is to provide protein solutions at food banks. And so we actually, a lot of our labs end up going to Hatch as well. We're appropriate to access and import and stuff like that, working to sell.
Question back there.
So right now it's
Yeah, great question. Yes, we do aspire to be in food
Done,
in
it's
food
actually
service.
lunch.
Yeah. Right? Yeah, we're looking to learn and understand, how the product performs in food service. Obviously, there's different challenges in terms of speed of service, the product's refrigerated, so understanding like how to work online, and making sure that the integrity of the product can uphold, to the end consumer. We are actually planning to do a really small market test with Bobby's Tacos in Las Vegas in a couple of months. It's just like one franchisee with 7 locations, so we're really looking to learn and kind of crawl before we walk and make sure we figure out how does it work and what would be the pack size, required, is the diameter of our product appropriate. But we see a ton of opportunity in food service. We've had a few conversations with like some colleges and universities actually that have expressed a lot of interest. So it's definitely part of the game plan. And any insight that any of you would love to provide, we will take all the insight that we can as we
So
start
we will
to
see
work.
that product on top of the next year. We will say we all witnessed that action right here in this room. Yes, exactly. Any other questions? Thank you. This is, like I said.